na polisi.
Ndege za polisi na ndege za KWS na ndege za forest ambazo katika ile serikali nyingine walikusanya zote na wakaweka kwa jeshi. Wacha polisi wasimamie ndege yao ndio wafanye rapid response, tusipoteze askari wengi wakifanya mambo ya usalama huko.
To our call.
In an unexpected twist, former Rift Valley Regional Commissioner George Natembea opened up on the sad state under which the frontline officers working in hardship areas go through.
Wakati mimi nilikuwa RC for 3 years, hakuna hata ndururu, and I mean 1 cent, ambayo nilipewa kupambana na wahalifu. Hao maafisa wetu ambao naona wanapigwa marisasi na kukufa, hakuna hata mmoja anapewa allowance. Hata chakula kule inafika mahali askari wanafanya an unholy alliance na majangili, wapeane risasi ili wapewe mbuzi wa kule.
Natembea also said that security officers deployed to fight the vice have been compromised.
Sisi tuliomba jeshi na rais ambaye aliondoka alitupatia jeshi for 10 days. Yale mambo ambayo alifanyia kule na Laikipia Conservancy ndiye alifanya mimi nikasema hii kazi mimi nitawacha. Kwa sababu mnaambia jamaa coordinates ndio hizi, majangili wako pande hiyo, au wanakuja wanapiga bomu pande hii. Maana wenye ng'ombe, wenye mifugo, wenye nani ni wale watu ambao wanakaa nao kwa meza mkipanga mikakati ya kumaliza majangili.
President William Ruto yet again cautioned the bandits that have wreaked havoc in northern parts of the country, maintaining the government will not bow down to their antics.
Nimemwambia Professor Kindiki atoke ofisi Nairobi, aende aishi kule North Rift mpaka hiyo mambo ya wananchi kupoteza maisha yao iishe. Tumeweka mpango kamili na ile uwezo wote wa serikali, tutahakikisha wale watu wajeuri wachache wako pale wanajaribu kutuonyesha kiburi. Sisi tutapimana na wao na tutahakikisha kwamba hakuna Mkenya anapoteza maisha yake.
Ruth Sarmoi, NTV, Nakuru.
The Kenya Kwanza Brigade has termed the return of former President Uhuru Kenyatta into politics as a ploy to frustrate his successor, sitting President William Ruto. They claim that the Azimio leadership is reuniting in fear of retribution, stating that the government of the day will not be shaken. Here is NTV's Kevin Mutai.
The Kenya Kwanza regime is accusing former President Uhuru Kenyatta of being the mastermind of the current political activities by the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party.
Mimi bado ni mfuasi wa nani? Mfuasi wa nani? Sasa akiniambia twende lazima na ndipo mimi nasema mimi nilimuunga mkono wakati huo na bado nitaendelea kumuunga mkono.
They claim that Kenyatta is back in Azimio politics, ostensibly to strengthen the revolt against President William Ruto.
When you transit, you allow the other Inspector General to do their job. You don't come back to the arena. So we are pleading and reminding those who have transited that the time now is for William Ruto. You transit and let William Ruto do his job.
This comes against the backdrop of anti-government rallies led by Raila Odinga.
These people are having hallucinations and nightmares. They cannot sleep because walitumia askari kuumiza watu.
The president did not win by selling revenge. He sold an agenda to transform this country.
Ni jambo gani lingine linaweza kufanyika ambalo linaondoa huyu rais kwa kiti? Bila tutapoteza muda na mnaenda kuongea. Rais ako kwa kiti by right. Alipewa kura na Wakenya. He doesn't have to apologize to anybody.
The head of state also defended members of parliament who shifted their allegiance from Azimio to his Kenya Kwanza outfit, vowing to work with them in order to achieve his agenda.
Kenya has been held hostage to ethnic politics, to personality cult politics for far too long. We need to unchain ourselves from that kind of politics so that we can unleash the potential of our citizens and the potential of our country and move our country to the next level.
Hii nchi ni kubwa kuliko watu wengine wote, si ni kweli?
ile vitisho tunapewa, tunaambiwa ya kwamba hatuwezi kuja State House. Sisi tualike, tutakuja mara mingi zaidi.
Mimi nimeokoka sasa, siku ya leo nimeona dhambi zangu zote nimetupa hapa. Nataka nifanye kazi na serikali ya rais, na nilivyokusudi tulitoka kwa Jubilee tukakuja hapa.
Ndio sisi tulijitoa tukasema kama ana Jubilee. Je, kama kidogo familia kulikuwa na shida kidogo, na hiyo shida ilitatuliwa, si utaenda tu pale familia yenu yuko? Ndio tulisema hatutaenda kwa hiyo barabara, and I want to put it in this broad daylight. Jubilee has made a decision to work with the government of His Excellency President William Ruto.
We recognize that the fifth president of the Republic of Kenya is none other than His Excellency William Samoei Ruto.
President Ruto says he will continue casting his net wider, leaving the doors of the House on the Hill open for any leader who wants to support his agenda for the country. Kevin Mutai, NTV.
Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party leader Raila Odinga has challenged the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission (IEBC) to open its servers and prove to Kenyans that President William Ruto won last year's presidential elections. And as NTV's Oko Kusa reports, the opposition chief has reiterated his claim that he won the polls by 8.9 million votes against President Ruto's 5.9 million.
Wanasema hiyo ni uongo, wafungue saba kama wanataka. Wafungue saba. Kwanza wanasema mkati. Mpaka toa ofisi, akitakuwa akuchapa matokeo ya uchaguzi ya rais. Mwanake sheria inasema atuchaguze rais na katika kila constituency.
Huwezi kuendelea kutumia mali ya Wakenya kununua wabunge. Ulichaguliwa kwani huna wabunge wa kutosha. Lakini kama umenyakua kiti kigumu, unajua bunge imejaa Azimio, na ndio umeanza kutoa pesa na kununua watu. Utanunua wabunge, lakini huwezi ukanunua hawa wananchi wote.
Unachaguliwa na tikiti ya ODM, unachaguliwa na tikiti ya Wiper, unachaguliwa na tikiti ya Jubilee, unachaguliwa na tikiti ya Azimio, vyama ambavyo ni wanachama Azimio, unaenda bunge na wewe unaharibu heshima ambayo wananchi wa Kenya walikupatia. Hawa wananchi wako na haki kunyakua mamlaka kutoka kwako. Wangapi wanasema atanyakua mamlaka?
All right, before we get into the politics of the day with my panelists, here is what else is happening. A new mosquito species known as the Anopheles stephensi has been reported to be resistant to several insecticides that are used to treat bed nets. According to the World Health Organization, the mosquito has also been reported in Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, Djibouti, and is more prevalent in urban areas. Though preventable, malaria remains one of the major killer diseases, in the country, with data indicating that there are 3.5 million cases of the disease, causing 10,700 deaths every year. So far, counties with the highest malaria prevalence in Kenya include Kakamega, Kisumu, Vihiga, Homa Bay, Migori, Siaya, Busia and Kisii. Experts are now calling for intensified surveillance following the Anopheles stephensi, which experts say could increase malaria by 50%, as it has already been identified in Marsabit County, mainly along the northern transport corridor that connects Kenya to Ethiopia. Further afield, 6 days after a deadly 7.8 magnitude earthquake hit Turkey and Syria, rescue workers are still working around the clock in search of signs of life beneath the rubble of collapsed buildings. Monday's quake that struck near the Turkish city of Gaziantep, about 40 kilometers from the Syrian border, has so far killed 33,000 people, including at least more than 3,500 in Syria. Tens of thousands of rescue workers continue to scour flattened neighborhoods in freezing weather that that has deepened, the misery of millions now in desperate need of aid. In the affected regions, dense neighborhoods, hundreds of spectators gather at every search site, crowding around rescue teams to provide information on which victims are still unaccounted for. Meanwhile, rescuers on Sunday pulled a 7-month-old baby and a teenage girl from the rubble. United Nations Relief Chief Martin Griffiths warned that the death toll was likely to at least double, while denouncing a failure to provide sufficient aid for victims in war-torn Syria. Officials say 12,141 buildings were either destroyed or seriously damaged in the earthquake. All right, before we get into the dailies, lack of sufficient food supply in schools is becoming a major area of concern as drought continues to bite. Education stakeholders in Kwale have called on government and humanitarian agencies to supply relief food to schools to benefit children in drought-hit counties. Speaking during Kenya Keys conference in Kinango, sub-county in Kwale, education stakeholders expressed fear of possible mass school dropouts due to drought in the county. They have, however, urged the government to reintroduce school feeding programs as emergency action.
The impact of climate change and lack of food is being felt there. First and foremost is taking back the retention of students in schools. We have seen them dropping out of school due to hunger and lack of food in their families and households. Others, instead of transiting to the next level of education from primary grade 8 to high school, majority are not doing that, apart from the one we have sponsored. So it affects the transition rates of the student as well as the retention rates of the students.
When you're looking at the climate and all of the battles that this area is facing with that, the #1 drive that every single student has is to stay alive. And we want to get educated, but when you are suffering with hunger, which I cannot imagine this feeling that they're feeling, that is the basic need. And so whatever we are doing has to focus on some of these basic needs and help them fill their bellies so their cups are getting fuller so that they can now have more room to become educated.
And of course, as of now, maybe a short-term measure to do is to consider food relief. Have the school feeding program be revamped and be something that is ongoing throughout, at least to have some of these kids might be might be the only meal for them in school, and at least that will keep them in school and ensure they get their education.
All right, time to get into the dailies with my panelists. Just a reminder of our topic this morning, the Great Migration. MPs for sale, or are they moving with the times? Samson Cherargei, Senator Nandi, Eddie Okech, Senator Migori, Dr. Martin Olo, an advocate, and Charles Munui, a governance consultant. And in case we have not been introduced, my name is O Barrows, Olive Barrows, O Barrows being my Twitter handle. Let's start with the Daily Nation front page. Auctioned COVID-19 pandemic wreaked unprecedented havoc on many individuals and businesses. Tough times, more and more Kenyans are losing their valued assets, vehicles, pieces of land, houses and household goods as landlords, banks, SACCOs, Shylocks and online lenders go after them for defaulting on loans and payments. The high cost of living, highlighted by the runaway inflation, is not making life any better for borrowers, and for many Kenyans, it is just a matter of when, not if, the auctioneers will come knocking. More on that on page 7. I see a figure here of 1,062, and that figure is in relation to the number of registered companies that closed down between July 2022 and December of 2022. On the left here, insecurity, police deaths in Turkana bandit attacks rise to 4. Body of General Service Unit officer found as Rift leaders on pressure on the government to deploy the Kenya Defence Forces to tame rampant insecurity in the region. The image on the front page is that of an interdenominational prayer service that was held yesterday in Nakuru. I see there President William Ruto, his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, the First Lady Rachel Ruto, and Pastor Dorcas, who is the Deputy President's wife, and Ruto defends courting rival MPs, says he's on a unity drive, and that just so happens to be our topic of conversation this morning. President William Ruto has insisted his Kenya Kwanza administration is keen to incorporate everyone, including his competitors, in uniting the country, and rejected claims he's wrecking the opposition. All right, front page of the Business Daily. Ruto ejects over 120 Uhuru allies in parastatal changes. At least 119 board chairs and directors hired in 58 firms. Next phase will seek to replace chief executives. This report by two people, Patrick Alushula and Kefa Mwiruri. An image here of, who are these? President William Ruto, his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, and the Council of Governors, Anne Waiguru and other leaders during a consultative meeting with governors in Naivasha, Nakuru County on Friday. And who took this picture? That image is by John Njoroge. All right, so that is the front page of the Business Daily. I will invite my panelists to respond to that. But first, Taifa Leo. Ruto na Raila wakabana ko kuhusu matukio ya wabunge wa Azimio Kwanza kuegemea upande wa serikali. Again, our topic of conversation this morning. And this is the headline, washikana mashati. Ruto kuhusu upinzani, wabunge wa Jubilee wako huru kushirikiana nami, maana nilikuwa nao tukianzisha chama hicho. Pili, nitashirikiana na viongozi wote waliochaguliwa kwa ajili ya maendeleo. Raila uliza Ruto, iwapo ulishinda kura, kwa nini unawanunua wanasiasa wa Azimio? Kwa nini hujachapisha matokeo ya kila eneo bunge katika gazeti la serikali? So that is the front page of the Taifa Leo. Again, our topic of conversation. Let's quickly take a look at the East African front page before we get into the Standard, which I spied and again informs the topic of conversation. Front page of the East African Air Base, Boeing vie for Uganda orders. The European and US firms executives have been camping in Kampala to pitch sales of their narrow-body planes as Carrier prepares to service international routes like London and Dubai. Congo, Uhuru's balancing act. Some say he's on M23's side. Others say he's in Tshisekedi's pocket. Ruto allies want him recalled. Will he deliver? I heard yesterday the former Nairobi governor, Mike Sonko, who in the last election vied for Mombasa governor and lost, saying that Uhuru Kenyatta should be sacked as peace envoy. 36th AU Summit, another round of broken promises. African leaders converge on Addis to talk about peace and security again. All right, front page of the Standard now. Ruto on path to absolute power. President William Ruto's plan to control parliament is evident, with moves to co-opt members from the opposition, with the House resuming tomorrow. And now with a super majority, it will be a walk in the park for the president on passing legislation and blocking oversight. I wonder what my panelists think. Again, pain of bills, high taxes. That is also on the front page of the Standard. Government officials have been shouting loud on why Kenyans need to pay taxes. However, not the same effort is applied when it comes to paying pending bills that are crippling businesses. 603 billion shillings, that is the amount in pending bills. All right, I think I'm only left with a Star now. Ruto's MP numbers, threat to Uhuru Raila supermajority, could give president a free hand to engineer key constitutional changes. All right, I will invite my panelists to comment first on these two stories. This one on pending bills and also this one on the front page of the Daily Nation with regard to 1,062 number of registered companies closing down between July of 2022 and December of 2022. Charles, given you're first up in the line, does this concern you?
Thank you very much. I think the issue of pending bills are two levels. First one, we must find a way of not getting there in the first instance. If you look at how CDF operates, we don't have pending bills because you only spend what you have. And I think if you look at even the projects that are funded, say for example by the World Bank, Kenya Urban Support Program for example, you spend what you have so that you don't end up there. How we ended up procuring without the resources to pay for the same strange. But I'm happy my friend and colleague Cherargei is here. He'll tell us how far they've gone. I've seen in the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, they are talking about securitization, where all these pending bills are turned into a bond that is sold to investors, and then the suppliers and the contractors are paid, and then the government now in future sorts out the issue of the investors. Because if all that money was out there in the public domain, life would change for a lot of people. So the issue of securitization, so that the money is available to pay the contractors, should happen. But I think ultimately we must find a way of ensuring that we don't have those pending bills in the first instance. Something must happen around that.
Okay. Eddie, does this concern you, hearing that 1,062 registered companies closed between July of 2022 and December of 2022? Does it come as a surprise?
Not as a surprise, but it's definitely a concern, given that the ripple effect of that is big. Because if the companies are closing as a result of just not being able to operate, then the government is also depressed about raising money. Because this has got impact on definitely people that they employ, and has got a lot of impact also in terms of just the revenue that the government can be able to make from this. So it's a very huge concern that needs to be dealt with urgently. And especially when you look at the counties, you know, as a protector of the devolved systems, this problem is even more endemic in counties, because counties with the serious spending bills are even now turning to banks to be able to pay things like salaries. And if you're getting money from banks and you are loaning more than local businesses, then you further depress these businesses, because you're basically crowding them out from the loaning market from banks. So it's a very big concern that needs to be addressed critically and urgently.
So there are counties which are taking bank loans.
Yes.
To pay employee salaries.
Yes.
Case in point, if you have one in mind.
Homa Bay is doing that. Migori is facing the same. And actually a number of them that have had these serious delayed funds have to borrow a lot of money from Equity Bank, from local banks, to be able to pay their employees.
Okay. Yeah. Senator Cherargei?
Good morning, and it's good to be on AM Live. I think this is the first time.
Oh, karibu sana.
And Happy New Year to our viewers. I think I've never been on NTV this year. Of course, it's a serious concern, considering that when we had COVID in 2020, most of the business projections, even the World Bank, IMF, and other international businesses across the world is still recovering. And they had projected that up to 2023, they will be slowed down. And the projection was that business might take longer to stabilize up to the end of 2023. Of course, it is a concern, as my colleagues have said, and I think what is happening is that most of the government cushioning that were put in place across the world and even in Kenya, unfortunately had to come down or had to be stopped because it was no longer sustainable. This, of course, will make many companies, and we look forward that, of course, it is not the wish of any leader or any government, companies to shut down, because, of course, the side effects are very dangerous. Because one, you will not be able to get tax. Number two, Kenyans who depend as employees, the business also environment is affected. So all these factors are going to, in one way or another, affect the livelihood of Kenyans. And I think the government, as one of the key factors that the government is trying to put in place, is the issue of Hustler Fund, where there are so many startup businesses. You remember in the last session, as a parliament, we passed what we call startups bill, which was signed into the Act law. So if some of those legislative environment and the government, for example, using Hustler Fund, among other funds, can allow these companies to jumpstart and maybe come back to business, it is going to assist many Kenyans. But I think the issue of tough times, of course, and you know, many people are not differentiating, because sometimes when you talk about auction, there are what we call financial sharks in the streets, called these famous people, you borrow money and the Shylocks. Yeah, that's the name I was looking for. Shylocks also. So when you say property is being auctioned, do you mean that are being sold? Because I know a number of businesses that are being, or property being lost because of Shylocks. Others are caused because of foreclosure. Others are caused because of banks, because the non-payment of loans. But of course, for this 1 year, naturally, if you look at the election cycle, every after election cycle in Kenya, there are things that re-emerge, and one of them is that economy is affected because we spend most of the time in politics, and therefore business naturally is affected. But looking into the future, I hope and believe that even as the government stabilizes for this 1 year, from 2023 towards the end, some of these businesses will recover. And by the way, Olive, you should be, I think we need to be grateful to some businesses that are pulled through, especially during COVID, because most of them were resilient. I know a number that some of hotels have shut down permanently, including our neighboring hotel near to Bunge there. So there is a number of businesses that were resilient, others were permanently affected because of COVID. But I think the government has dedicated through SMEs, where majority of the business is, and nowadays we have a ministry that is committed to issues of SMEs, and that is where the real business is. So it is very unfortunate, and I hope also other private sector also can also assist in one way or another, not only government interventions but also private sector, so that Kenyans do not continue to suffer. But we hope this will stop.
How would private sector come in?
A private sector by also providing incentives and necessary interventions, for and a number of them have done before, because in partnership with government, you know government does not do business. It is only private sector that does business. Government is to provide an enabling environment, provide ensuring that maybe those infrastructure, the roads and other things. But private sector in itself is the main critical player. And there are many partnerships that have been provided. I've seen companies in this country that sometimes take under their wing big corporate companies. I don't want to mention their names because somebody might think I'm doing marketing in your show. And they have undertaken some of these small companies under their wings, either through giving them extension of financial support, financial advice. We know a number of them, including banks and many others.
I get you now. Yeah. All right. You say government does not do business, but we'll come back to the topic of parastatals next. Yes. Dr. Martin Olo, what do you make of this headline as well as that on the front page of the Standard as concerns pending bills?
Good morning, Olive and colleagues. I'm sorry that I arrived when everybody was seated, but be that as it may, it's true that businesses are hurting. It's true that COVID may have contributed a significant part of it. But the side of this discussion that I was hoping that my senator friends would deal with, the problem of funding between the national government and county government has been long an issue. So that when you look at pending bills, it's not an overnight result of COVID. It's a deliberate happening between the national government and county governments. And it's not this government or whichever. It's been something that, if you ask me, a reluctance on our part to accept what devolution means and what national government ought to do, and therefore what we need to do in terms of pending bills. Now, these senators here will tell you that they know a number of people who, just by doing business with government, have actually been shut down, have lost money, have been auctioned, just by doing business with government. Because government does not pay in time, it takes its sweet time, and one of the things I teach is insolvency law. Insolvency is simply the inability of our cash flow to meet your liabilities. So as soon as your needs and your outflows are higher than your inflows, you are in trouble. You have to reorganize your finances. You have to check around how then you can actually cushion yourself. So yes, government has a role to play. Number one, it has to pay its bills. Number two, government does business. In fact, it is the reason why government does business is because private sector alone will not cushion people the way it should. So when government is dealing with, when central bank is making profits, there's something it's doing between itself and the banks in order to just offer checks and so on. So in general, governments do business. the issue about governments not doing business is a philosophical issue that we'll deal with. One of the issues here is what does IMF tell us, and what do World Bank tell us? What is the reality? So when my colleague says here that subsidies are not affordable, it's a debatable issue. Affordable according to? Because if your farmers need incentives in order for them to produce, those incentives will normally come from government, and it comes in form of subsidies. If the hotels or indeed businesses require cushioning in order for them to survive in terms of the storms, be it COVID or whatever it is, it's only governments that do that, because they can do that at concessionary costs. Anybody else will bring it up at very high interest rates and so on. And so governments are here to actually create a level playing field, to intervene in the market whenever it's necessary in order for the market to thrive. So it is a common practice, whether you're in the US, whether you're in Europe and in Africa. However, when we come to Africa, we are told that, government should get out of business, let the private sector run it. The truth of the matter is that government has a role to cushion. It is business.
All right. And speaking of government in business, senators, I'll give you right of reply. Given your senators, I imagine your brains are big enough to take another question together with what Martin has put to you. But I want to look now at the front page of the Business Daily. Ruto ejects over 120 Uhuru allies in parastatal changes. At least 119 board chairs and directors hired in 58 state firms. Next phase will seek to replace chief executives. Charles, is this par for the course because Ruto needs somewhere to take his allies?
I think the reality is when you win, you come with an agenda. And for that agenda to be implemented, you need a team of people that work with you. The reason as to why you seek power in the first instance is so that you're able to serve. So I don't think it's really a big issue. Just like you not complain when he changes the cabinet, when he removes cabinet ministers and replaces them, matches their own contract or whatever it is that you call it. So to me, removing individuals from parastatals, it should not be a thing to really worry about. I think what needs to happen is that we need to think bigger about these parastatals in the first instance. Is the removal and the changes therein meant to improve on performance? What exactly is this that is being resolved? If you bring in, for example, leadership, a new leadership, for example, in KPLC, we want to know if government owns 50.1% of Kenya Power, and last year they made double the profit they made the year before. What is this obsession with increasing rates that people pay for electricity? I think those are the small details that everyone wants to appreciate and understand, and we see that change towards the better. It is really not about the individuals that are running these parastatals. It is about what policy changes, what management changes do you bring on board to be able to implement that which you've seen right and which has been going wrong in as far as you're concerned with the previous administrations.
All right. Eddie, I'm curious what you make of these changes because we refer to them many times as political appointments, a place to dump those who may not have succeeded with the electorate. But is that the most prudent thing to do? Because, for example, you've talked about big picture, Charles, and we're looking at the privatization bill, or rather, it will be looked at by Parliament in short order, given public participation took place, I believe, ended on the 7th last week. Is it last week or last week? But one. So, is it the most prudent decision? Where we're dealing with parastatals, these changes, are they always the most prudent decisions to take, this change in leadership, depending on who is in office?
First of all, let me agree with my brother Martin that, you know, the most endemic problem that we have, because we've got a big team of devolved officials in the county governments, and the most endemic problem is that the delayed funds by government to counties is indeed a very big problem. But that said, we also need to recognize that the county governments only get about 15% of the national budget. If you look at the CRA report, the latest CRA report, you get that in the past 3 years, the government, Uhuru Kenyatta's government, did devolve up to about 26% of our national budget to counties. That means that about 74% still lies with the national government, sitting in these different parastatals in one or different ways. That means that what we then need to look in where that money is seated is serious wastage and leakages with regards to that money. And that wastage and leakages come in form of one, inefficient KRA collections, which is sometimes something that is advanced by government officials that are protected by government, even the current government, to the extent that people are not collecting what the government is supposed to be collecting. So there's a pot that is not getting enough money in terms of raising money that Martin was talking about. And then on the other side, we have got serious procurement problems where we've got a lot of procurement leakages that again lead to endemic loss of money in government. KPLC is a very good example because as my brother Martin has talked about loss in government money, you'll find that KPLC, people in government are protected by their masters to be able to do business with the same government parastatal. For instance, one of the biggest problems that KPLC is having is that the meters that we have today is not collecting enough money for KPLC. KPLC have got a lot of loans, but it's not collecting enough money. Why? Because the specs of those meters that we have currently were things that were done and procured by government officials locally to the extent that they can't collect a lot of money. And then you find that every money that goes to KPLC, 53% of that money goes to tax and levies. Only 47% goes to KPLC as proper revenue. Then what ends up happening is that they can't raise enough money as a company, and then now forces government to raise these tariffs. So it's a big problem. Now, to the extent that you have talked about the issue of, basically chasing away people working for government because they come as a new government, is a very unfortunate thing. And it's something that we must condemn. Reason being, first of all these people are Kenyans. And they are Kenyans with serious talent in government. I think some of the people that I looked at those lists are some of the most qualified people to run those jobs. And more so, they have been in these positions with commitments. There are some of them who took loans, knowing very well that they have got contract with government, and they have got children to take to school. They have got a number of obligations, including healthcare, to take care of. So if every government will be coming, and then you chase away people who are Kenyans, who have got right to work in these institutions, just because you vilify them, for one, having worked for the previous administration, or two, because they do not support you ideologically, it's very unfortunate. If you go to counties where we, the two of us, have been given a mandate by Article 96 of the Constitution to protect the counties, if you're going to target people in the counties, that governors are going to target people who have been employed, are permanently employed and pensionable, to take them out because they are from the previous administration or because they do not support them, what will we be doing? We will be making the human resource factor of our communities very, very difficult to run. So this is something that should not happen. I think that the Ruto's government should be able to work strongly in terms of aligning policies, aligning ideology into these people, and let them work because they are Kenyans and they have got right to work in these particular jobs.
All right, we need to take a break. So, Senator Cherargei, when we come back, I'll give you occasion to respond to this, and then we'll get into this. Is Ruto on the path to absolute power? On the other side of this break.
February is the month of love, and this February we've got an amazing activity for all the singles who are ready to mingle. It's going to be an afternoon full of good vibes and awesome activities from speed dating, sip and paint, charades, karaoke, and so much more. Get to enjoy live music from Hardbird Band. Catch the Season 3 Episode 1 live recording of the Joyrides podcast. Mark your calendars for February 18th right here at Anzana Gardens from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. Get your tickets on Kenya Buzz today. That's www.kenyabuzz.com. XOXO, get ready to mingle.
She's my lover, lover. She's my lover, lover. She's my lover, lover.
If you want to buy diamonds, leave the money here. We'll call you when we get the shipment.
Why do we need to leave the money behind? This is no longer about the money. It's about taking back what's rightfully mine. What do you mean? That company is mine. And unless I get it back, all of this is meaningless.
What? No! What's wrong with you? Carlos, no! Carlos, in case you've forgotten, this is my house. It's my townhouse.
Forever my love.
Grow your biashara by accessing loans, investment options, convenient banking, network opportunities, and so much more. Njoo tukujenge. Visit any one of our 93 branches countrywide. Family Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
I'm Julian Samboko, Oliver Mathenge,
Matthew Mbithi,
Nick Nyamori, Migok,
James Uluoch.
I'll be attending Man Cave.
I'll be attending Man Cave.
And I'll be attending Man Cave.
And I'll be attending the Man Cave on the 25th of February at the Lake House, Tigoni. Join us.
See you then.
See you then.
And I hope to see you there.
Will you?
To see an example of persistence and determination, look no further than Harry Kane. A talented young striker, Kane went out on loan 4 times early in his career, unsure of his future at the top level. A decade on, that persistence and determination has paid off. Kane now part of history as Tottenham's all-time leading goal scorer.
Grow your biashara by accessing loans, investment options, convenient banking, network opportunities, and so much more. Njoo tukujenge. Visit any one of our 93 branches countrywide. Family Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. And before we get into maneno ya super majority, I even have the Parliament website open. We'll do a bit of mathematics. I'll download the list of elected members of Parliament in general, and we can do the counting. See if President William Ruto now has a super majority. But before then, I did promise to give the Nandi Senator, Samson Cherargei, occasion to respond to this. Ruto ejects over 120 Uhuru allies in parastatal changes. And there's also something Martin talked about, the national government frustrating county governments in release of funds which would enable them to pay pending bills. Senator, we are at this point in time discussing the privatization bill. And actually, the public participation took place last week and last week but one, the 31st in most counties, and then bedroom counties are Nairobi on the 7th of February. Now that we are considering privatizing public institutions, it's something that's happened before. The question is this: a lot of the time the problem is management. Therefore, is it prudent every time we change guard, we change the managers at the helm of these parastatals?
I think maybe before I respond to that, there was a small matter I forgot to escape on pending bills. And as my mwalimu, my teacher, has said, some of us who have been there is a time in 2021, there was a treasury circular that was issued through, and we sat with many governors. And at that time, most counties were doing a pending bill of 199 billion. I think I agree with what my colleague just said. that why should you spend the money that you do not have? And I think when you look at financial laws and Public Finance Management Act, what should be happening is counties should not be giving out tenders without having money. And I think those are some of the financial laws that we need to look at. Because another issue is ghost projects, because according to Business Daily early this year, they had said that there was a pending bill in counties of 156 billion. 48 billion was cleared within 6 months by the by counties. The indication that 108 billion could not be paid because they were unsupported documentation. And you know, Olive, I also sit, this is almost my 5th or my 6th year in Public Accounts Committee of the counties. Therefore, we have gone through financial reports, the Auditor General's report, and I think the issue of pending bill, I agree with Adams here that many people have gone to bankruptcy because of doing business with county governments or national government. I think this is a serious issue. I know there are many business people that have gotten diabetes, pressure. Others have lost their livelihoods. They have lost their lives. I know a number of them in counties. Now, everybody, when they see a government tender, be it county or national, some people run literally like night runners. So those are some of the challenges that we are facing. And like before, when you had even an LPO, government LPO, all banks would be looking for you to finance it. But nowadays, it's opposite. People are losing property. The way, in fact, what we were discussing earlier about auctioning of some of the property is because of the pending bills that these people have. Finally, on the issue of, and I think the issue of cash disbursement also has been a challenge. We have fought this, there is a time even we wanted to sanction Ukur Yatani. Because I think at Article 219, when the money has been issued, has been budgeted and appropriated, it should be issued immediately. It should be released without delay. And I remember we tried to sanction Ukur Yatani, and then when he was the CS Finance, it was a big challenge. And therefore, these are some of the challenges, and I hope, and I want to commend the President, because by sitting with governors for the last 2 days in Naivasha, I hope governors were serious and they discussed this small matter. Because every time, by the way, we have even called special sitting as a Senate to come and pass cash disbursement schedule. But after passing, there is no money that goes to counties. And finally, on the issue of small matter of issue of ejection, by the way, I think these people ejects, no one is ejecting anybody. As far as I know a number of friends who are CEOs that their term was lapsing. Others were just finishing their term, they were looking for renewal. Number two, there is also staff attrition. Number four, there are a number of these CEOs who resigned to contest some of the positions that we were running in 2022. So a number of these are either replacement, others are retired. And then finally, all over the tradition, all over the world. We are not talking about political witch hunt. Even when Biden won and Trump left, a number of Trump allies had to be shown the door. Because you need people who can have your vision. You need people who will not sabotage your vision. You need people who will see the vision that you have for the country. And every Kenyan, and I want to confirm to the nation, that every Kenyan that is competent will have a chance to serve in William Ruto's government. And by the way, I have seen there is a lot of misnomer in public, and I want to appeal to media. Many people imagine that politicians are not professionals. Politicians are also professionals. A number of us are lawyers, a number of us are accountants, a number of us are teachers. Does it mean that when you are no longer a politician, you cannot go back and teach simply because you are a politician? Because some of us are very competent. If we were taught by people like my lecturer here, Dr. Adams Olo, you can imagine the quality of who we are when we are not politicians. So I think this issue of, this is an alarmist headline. Please, I want to beg also, let us also as media, don't in quotes inside the pipe, because no one has been ejected. So if somebody like Kenya Pipeline, I have a friend who used to be a CEO at Kenya Pipeline. He just retired. So how do we explain that? Do you say he was being ejected because Ruto came to power? So I think we should at least weigh what we write and also give the correct information, because at the end of the day, you must have, even if Azimio had won, which was impossible, they would have, we would also be having similar headline by saying, so because Raila is the president and so is the president, then they have ejected who was the CEO or what have you. So let us allow the government to settle down. Let us see what we can do. And you know, people like Eddie should not be complaining. Why should they be complaining that people are ejected, yet they are saying they don't recognize the government? and they don't recognize the president. You can't have your cake and eat it. So let us be honest with the conversation that we have. You cannot be complaining in a national television on a Monday morning at AM Live by saying President William Ruto ejecting people. But on Sunday and Friday and Saturday, you are somewhere in Migori, and unfortunately I didn't see him yesterday. I think Baba should create a space in his chopper to be taking him to rallies. I didn't see him in Busia yesterday. So that he's saying on Sunday in Busia that...
Just protect Eddie from...
so that by the...
These are politicians.
You know they're sitting next to each other.
They know how to
Of course, on a lighter note, because, you know, when you hear people like Eddie, my brother Eddie, discussing that the government has ejected, then on Sunday, they don't recognize the same government. On Monday, they are now saying the government is doing this. So let us be honest with Kenyans and understand. But anyway, that is just what I wanted to say. Let us allow the government to settle. Let us allow the president to fix where they can. And on the issue of privatization of parastatals, I think that's a matter that will come to Parliament. I agree. I didn't mean that the government cannot do business or government cannot give subsidies or incentives or cushion. I was just saying during COVID, there were so many cushions that were given. There were many subsidies and incentives that were, but it was not so sustainable, and that is why at some level the government has to change its tact. But on the issue of parastatals, let us allow the Parliament to consider the proposal, because the intel that I have is that if we privatize a number of parastatals, Kenya, the government will end up making 30 billion profit in a financial year. So let's have that conversation. By the way, you know, I come from Sugar Belt. This is on the last, is that we have been having a problem with Chemelil Sugar Company, Miwani in Zoia, and others, even Mumia Sugar Company. And I think Olo comes from that region where we are in Sugar Belt region. So what should we do? Should we allow Chemelil, for example, to collapse simply because we want government to hold on to it? Should we allow maybe the issue of milk, new KCC, to hold on it simply because the government want to own it? Or can we do a public-private partnership and ensure farmers still get market and value and profit for government?
All right, but if we had competent managers, then maybe we would not be having that conversation on privatization. But Dr. Martin Olo, I'm sure many people confuse you with Dr. Adams Olo all the time. But your thoughts on this before I move us along.
What is also true is that I taught Adams Olo in Kenya School of Law, so that is also true. But back to this issue. And I like what my friends are saying, and I want to be very careful, because when you have a student with you, you want to be careful, you don't bash him too hard. So I'll be very careful. When you discuss this issue of the purge in parastatals, it is at two levels. The level we are witnessing is at the board level, the directors level. Now that's not employment per se. And those are political appointments per se, either by cabinet secretary or by the president, depending on what the law says. The point that I want to make and emphasize is not whether this government can remove the appointees of the previous government or not. The point is, how do we do it? It shows that these appointments are done on patronage clientelism basis. In other words, we come in, we bring our friends. We go out, our friends ejected, others bring in their friends. Now that is the problem, because when we are talking about boards, and he knows that I talk about corporate governance, you are looking at the body that gives direction, strategy, and policy oversight. Now, if these are the bodies, you know, if you want the parastatals to deliver, and these bodies, you bring in anybody at any time, you hire and fire at any time, what message are you passing in terms of corporate governance? It means that we don't care about it, number one. Number two, that we are actually not doing serious analysis as we feel this. But the critical issue for me is not whether the president can remove or whether the cabinet secretary can remove. It is the due process. Article 47 of the Constitution. Is there fair administrative action? Are people being given notice? Or they're just waking up revoking this? And you know that there are people who have gone to court and have had their appointments, the revocation of their appointments challenged and revoked as well. So basically what I'm saying is that we need to live by the rule of law. And I'll come back to the issue of rule of law as opposed to rule by law. Just because the law says you can appoint doesn't mean you must go ahead and appoint it. It's the process and the due process that you follow that is critical for us.
Okay.
As per Article 10 of the Constitution of Kenya, you know, you have certain values and principles to follow. Fair administrative action requires certain. What we are seeing is, I don't like you, I wake up, I purge you. What message are we sending? So that to me is the most critical message that we should be. Of course, the next thing we shall be seeing is the appointment of CEOs. So we still have a long way to go. The issue is, and I like what the senator said, that, you know, the Kenya is not short of competent people, it's not short of merit. The last thing I want to say on this show that I've seen is people being appointed on a basis of merit. It is not merit, it's not competence. It is loyalty, it's political rewards. Now, what are we saying when we're putting people in serious positions just because of that? We've seen people appointed even when they have had integrity issues. So what message are we passing? I think those are the critical issues, that we must be consistent in how we pass our message. Otherwise, for now, what we are seeing is not very different. In fact, one of the things that I want to say when Senator is listening is that the problems we are having are Jubilee generated. For example, the difficulties around national government, county government, we saw it. The problem is that the president didn't come from nowhere. He was previously Jubilee. And so there is a way in which he either gives a clear distinction between himself and the previous regime, or continues this with a bit of smartness. And we'll come to this because when you look at these issues, if you talk of rule of law, live by it. If you're saying that you want unity, and therefore that's why you're talking to members of the opposition, then live by it. Then talk to Raila as well. Don't say, no, you Raila be opposition, but you are taking away other people from him and saying you're building unity. So the consistency and the messaging here is something that we are looking for. So what is the narrative? We'll come back to it.
All right, Mwalimu, you have segued us perfectly into the topic of conversation. And interesting, I've learned there is rule of law and there is rule by law. Thank you very much, Mwalimu. Haya basi, the topic of conversation kukuwakumbusha tu ni the great migration, MPs for sale or moving with the times. You know, I was tempted to title this poster, Who's the Chicken Now? You know the song, is it the one by Nameless? Yes, because when Raila Odinga was speaking several times actually in Busia yesterday, and before that, where were they before that? Was it in Kibra? No, at the PG. At the PG in Manzoni. He said, MPs wanarushiwa mtama kama kuku, ni kama kuku. Yesterday he said they're getting 50,000, 100,000 to betray their ideals. But we'll get into that. Let's take a look at, and still in line with our topic of conversation, Ruto on path to absolute power. President William Ruto's plan to control parliament is evident with moves to co-opt members from the opposition, with the House resuming tomorrow and now with a super majority. It will be a walk in the park for the president on passing legislation and blocking oversight. So we'll kick off with this, Charles, because this has everything to do with our topic this morning. Part of what we are looking at now in this second session of the 13th Parliament is, one, the budget, right? So first of all, the supplementary budget estimates one for 2022-2023. I'll pull up the headline of apparently President William Ruto spent 4 billion shillings on luxuries. Apart from that, we've had the budget policy statement released. We are looking at now the 2023-2024 budget. So that is some of what is going to come under their docket in the second session. There was a memo from the president with regard to 2/3 creation of the office of the leader of the opposition, as well as entrenchment of CDF and Senate Oversight Fund.
Yes.
Right? In the Constitution. Is there now nothing standing in President William Ruto's way to achieve all that without taking us through a referendum?
Now, interesting. I think the book that President Ruto is using was written by other people. And I think if you look at how President Kibaki had a lot of problems trying to run government because he had he had very few members of parliament, and he had to go looking. It was not easy for him. Subsequently, look at what the former president, retired President Uhuru did. He looked around, he realized he did not have support from his Jubilee party. He went looking for Right Honorable Raila Odinga to come on board. And the one thing that Raila was bringing was members of parliament. And if you looked at everything Uhuru brought to parliament, he was basically relying on the members of parliament that were on ODM and the coalition party in parliament. So I believe that any president would want to have reasonable control of parliament, because legislation counts for everything when it comes to whatever it is that you have going through, and of course being able to serve. I don't believe that really is an issue, if you ask me. We have a system of governance, of government, where members of parliament, there's a very thin line. I don't know how you are clear that this is a member of parliament visiting the head of state, for example, as a member of parliament, or visiting the president because of political alignment. I don't know at what point it is possible to confirm that that meets the threshold, for example, of being deemed to have resigned from your political party and join the other side of the politics. To me, it is important for William Ruto, and I'm sure he's going to go about it that way, to ensure that whatever he brings on in parliament has a way of passing. Number two, and which is more critical, I don't think members of parliament are everything when it comes to these processes. We saw with BBI. BBI passed at the county level. It passed all levels of the county assemblies, and a lot of things will be said about that. But it passed. It went to parliament, both houses. It went through because at that time there was that majority on the side of government. But it was stopped by the courts. And ultimately, any process that has to go to the people, because it's provided for in Article 255, you will find it doesn't matter what position parliament takes, that process will still be subjected to the people. So ultimately, you'll have to convince the people on what it is that you are doing. To me, being able to manage parliament to the extent that you are able to pass whatever it is that you are passing, there is completely nothing wrong with that. Now, I think, to me, Raila Odinga is exposing his underbelly by, taking on the likes of Jalango, the likes of such members of parliament that have come out very clearly and said, we went there to do A, B, C, D. Much as you're convinced that was not the motivation, I think it would have been better to accommodate that, have them in the PG, come out, give a joint presser and say, yeah, we are one. This is a member of parliament. It's not as if he will not respond or agree with what the speaker says simply because the speaker is a Kenya Kwanza member. Simply because the Speaker of the National Assembly, for example, is there, courtesy of Kenya Kwanza. So what is the distinction between doing what is rightfully supposed to be done by you as provided for by a law and the Constitution, Article 95, 96, and what you're supposed to be doing in terms of the politics around what you do? Yeah. The other thing that is clear is that the likes of Jalango, Sonko, if you want, and the likes of Babu Owino, and Sakaja, for example, those are people who are where they are, not because of the way they are inclined to a large extent. Those are people who also build themselves on other platforms that are respected by their peers, and especially the people that they have a support base of. Yeah, young people who appreciate what it is they do, be it comedy, be it entertainment, be it just the politics, be it leadership of the universities and all that. That is a brand of politics that is not easily put down, and as far as the people are concerned, by just bashing them. These are people you accommodate and work with and manage, and have them on your side. To me, this issue of parliamentarians is going to be a difficult one to try and kick them out. And if you don't kick them out, or even attempt to kick them out, yet you have been public and said they are not with you, to the extent that you stop them from attending parliamentary group meetings, you'll find yourself opening too many battlefronts for no good reason whatsoever. When you have these guys rushing to court, doing this, the other one, much as they might not get elected again, because again it will count for a lot, your word, in as far as they are being elected again. But you have 5 years. This is 4 years that you need them on your side, working with you to pass whatever agenda that you have. Otherwise, if you don't have that majority, the process that you are undertaking looks delegitimized.
Okay. So, all right. Eddie, I want you to come.
I wanted to say this so that when the two members of parliament are speaking, you know, they are members of parliament. Eh?
Yes.
Because parliament is the National
Yes.
Assembly
Correct.
and the Senate. So
Correct.
they are members
Correct.
of parliament.
Correct.
When they are speaking, they can react to it, if you don't mind.
All right, go ahead.
The point that I want to say is this, that to tell me that you are going to State House because you need the president is a misnomer, is a misunderstanding of what the law is and the Constitution. Actually, it's the president who needs a member of parliament. Therefore, the president needs to go to look for the member, to go to the member of parliament. Not the member of parliament going to State House. There's no business being discussed in State House about development. The business that is about development for a member of parliament is in the National Assembly or the Senate, because it's either the way of a bill, it's the way of the finance bill. That's where the business is. That's where members of parliament actually determine. In this country today, it is the parliament that actually allocates resources and determines where resources are used. So if you go to the State House and you tell me that you're going to look for development, it means you don't know your job. Now, having said that, if the president is doing the right thing, then it's not about legality, it's about legitimacy. And if it's legitimacy, what he should be doing is looking for a motion that appeals to both sides and seeking bipartisan way in which he passes or these motions pass. The way he's going about it is that he wants to have majority and ram through bills. The consequences of that is that even if one or two people oppose it, they will have a legitimacy to so do. And what my brother Charles is saying, it doesn't matter. Parliament can pass it. Indeed, it can become law. But there are other avenues, courtesy of 2010 Constitution, in which these things will be struck down. I would have thought that the president learned. In fact, he was the biggest critic of BBI. He was the biggest critic of handshake. So he should not have handshake in the reverse.
Thank you very much.
Because
Because that was my question for this fella here,
Yes,
Daktari.
yes.
Eddie, is Ruto bringing about a handshake? Just look at this. Maybe wanasalimiana, labda nikusalimiana tu wanasalimiana, lakini does it look to you like Ruto has just brought about a handshake parliament another way?
It's more than a handshake. And as a young person who entered politics at a very young age, and then, you know, worked very hard to try to learn where our country has come from, it saddens me when I hear something like what my brother is talking about, that this is not a problem. And I agree with Martin. This is a very serious problem. I respect Ruto as an individual, but as he has said, I think that the issue of legitimacy versus legality even answers the question that my brother Cherargei talked about of why is Azimio side not recognizing the president. I think that, and then asking for, pushing for some service delivery to the people. I think the State House right now, the president is occupying the State House as an issue of legality as well. But as an issue of legitimacy, is a problem. 8 million people did not vote in this past election. That means that they did not vote for him. Another 8 million voted towards Azimio or are aligned towards Azimio, and that talks a lot about legitimacy. So when we talk about these issues in rallies, led by our leader Raila Amolo Odinga, that issue of legitimacy is big. But that said, Olive, this country, people like Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga fought that this country may be free from dictatorship. Because there used to be a time, and if you ask my brother Cherargei, if he has taken his time to read a little bit, between the time we got independence and 1992, the budget-making process in this country was an extremely skewed one. It used to be emanated from the State House, and then the technocrats in the Treasury would write the budget. The budget would be so dramatic, and nobody will be exposed to anything that is in that budget. In fact, the day when I went back into the archives of our history, I found out that the day that the budget is going to be read in this country was a full bravado, whereby no MP knew what was in that budget. No MP did put any input in that budget. And when it was read to MPs in Parliament, you know, they will start by talking about what is happening in the global stage, coming to what is happening locally, and then you're forced basically to take up a budget that you did not participate in. Today, people like Raila Amolo Odinga fought so hard that the budget could be made from Parliament. Therefore, Parliament has got the strength of actually running through the proposal sent by the Treasury and make sure that the budget is what reflects the people who voted them and gave them the sovereign powers under Article 1 of the Constitution. So the way we are going is more than just a handshake that you're talking about, backdoor handshake. It is actually entrenching a dictatorship. And actually, when my brother Cherargei was reading this, this is the only title that when Cherargei was reading, Ruto on the path to absolute power, I saw him smiling. And I think that is very dangerous for the country. You know, you should not be smiling about this kind of thing. You should condemn it. And just 1 minute. The reason why this is very risky, apart from fighting our democratic tenets, it's also risky because if the State House comes with serious laws that affect our people and you cannot be able to talk about because you are corrupted or you are bribed from State House, then you have lost your mandate from the people as an MP. For instance, you know right now that about 6-7% of our country's employers are people who are companies that are out of tech and companies that are out of the communication sector. What that means is that these companies like the parastatals like KPLC, sugar millers that are employing so many people, and if you look at all of them, the last 7 years, they have not reviewed their salaries, right, to their employees. And then you find that these companies have also pension funds that people are really contributing to those pension funds. In fact, somewhere like the Miller companies in Nyanza and in Western Kenya, people are contributing to their pension funds up to 15% of their salaries. And then at the managerial level, you find that people are paying 30% of their salaries to payee, which is basically mean that they don't have, they're paying it to government. If the next day your MP comes to you and tells you that he is in agreement with the State House Republican narrative of putting you to pay another NSSF of up to 12%, you are hemorrhaging to the level of 57% of your income doesn't come to you. What does that do to our economy? It forces our economy to have a lower total productivity factor. Why? People are not incentivized to work for government. People are not incentivized to work for their companies. People start doing these things we call side hustle. So somebody is supposed to be working for the company that employed them or for the government, but they can't because their revenue is depressed by repressive laws that MPs have passed as a result of this stomach infrastructure handshake that they go to do with the State House. So this is something that Kenyans must actually completely refuse and not allow our MPs to start going to State House and be in bed with the head of state.
All right, this stomach infrastructure you're referencing, we'll play a bite, I think, on the other side of the next break we take, where Samarama, the Nakuru West Member of Parliament, actually had extended an invitation to him and Kanini Kega to join us, but the president is in Nakuru and he's invited them for a meeting that was starting at 7. And then Elisha Odhiambo, who is one of the gentlemen who went to State House that Mheshimiwa Okech wants action taken on, and you'll tell us more about that, said he was in game, so he was unable to join us as well. But let's hear from Senator Cherargei. I just want to look at some of his tweets on the subject matter. ODM MPs, this was on the 7th of February, ODM MPs today have met President William Ruto at State House to discuss politics, empowerment and development, while Tinga is busy with political rallies, mandamanos and defending Mama Ngina. Uhuru and tax evaders. Transformation of Kenya is unstoppable under Kenya Kwanza administration. Then the next day, you know, the Jubilee MPs were in State House. This is what he tweeted. Today, over 30 MPs of Jubilee Party have pledged to fully support His Excellency Ruto government in transformation of our country. Azimio Oka opposition is being dismembered. Seriously, with time, they will be important in the political rallies, mandamanos into political oblivion. Katambe sasa. Senator, you are the same people who are saying we need an opposition. Now, they will be important.
I think what I can say from the onset is that politics is about competition. And it's about numbers and the perception that you create. One, let me put some things in perspective. One, the amendment of the Constitution is very clear, Article 255, either parliamentary or popular initiative. I want to confirm to you that this Ulabalu, and I've seen there is a narrative in this country, and it looks like media has been sucked into, is that William Ruto wants to get absolute, to change the structure of government or to amend the constitution through the back door. That is not true, because I'm aware, in fact, by the way, and Martin will agree with me and all the panelists, the issue of NCGDF, National CDF, being entrenched in the Constitution or Oversight Fund or NGAF is at the interest of members of parliament more than the president. Because without CDF, the MPs are not there. So there is no, you cannot give me a motivation where it says President William Ruto would want CDF to be entrenched in the Constitution, has more best interest than ordinary member of parliament, either Uniriri or anywhere in Migori, or for Senator Eddie Oketch, who wants an oversight fund like yesterday, is in the interest of the president. So we need to clear that all these members of parliament that are looking for President William Ruto is mostly in their own interest. Because one, you saw they didn't want to be trained an induction in Mombasa because they were saying there is no CDF and people are complaining. It's not about people complaining in the village. It's about their political interest. It is about what they want to protect. So the number two, the constitution is very clear. The president is a symbol of national unity. It is not the opposition leader. It's not Raila Odinga is the symbol of national. It says the president is a symbol of national unity. And what does that mean? It means everybody can access the president, but not limited to members of parliament. And I take an exception that a standing senator, Senator Eddie Oketch, who should be progressive, was making wild allegations saying that 50 million was being given to members, 9 members of ODM. Anyang' Nyong'o has been to see the president. No one complained. James Orengo, governor, who was my Senate minority leader then in the last parliament, there 2 days he was with Senator Cabinet Secretary of Roads, Murkomen. No one complained. Gladys Wanga was across here the street meeting the CS in charge of Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u. No one complained. So this cherry picking, and you know, Tinga is very interesting person, because when the president visited Homa Bay and Siaya and released the development goodies, it is the same Raila Odinga who told the people, please welcome the president, please discuss the development. And you had a number of political leaders. Unfortunately, he's governor, by the way. Governor, my brother, who we served together in the Senate, Ochila Ayako, and was my chair of public accounts, led members of parliament, except Migori senator, to meet the president at Kisumu State Lodge. Eddie Oketch did not issue saying that 50 million was being used or 100 million. I know he was being inducted by Baba because I saw him in South Africa. So as young people, we must think in a progressive manner without throwing around. The president can meet, even if Martin wants to see the president, he can see, because he's our president. When he swore by the Bible, he didn't say he would serve Kenya Kwanza or UDA or one region. He said he will serve the people of the Republic of Kenya. And I can confirm to you, Olive, that there are many members of parliament, and I don't want to name names, including senators, who want even a phone call with the president, or even an SMS or a WhatsApp with the president. Because all of us are leaders. We need to work together for the benefit of the people. I agree with members of my brother here saying that it is true that the parliament does the appropriation of the budget, it allocates money. It, of course, the president comes and presents the reports in this State of the Nation address most of the time. I agree. But at the end of the day, the president and parliament must have a symbiotic relationship for the performance. In fact, it is the same, and I heard my brother, Senator, the area senator of Nairobi, Senator Edwin Sifuna. You remember the president when he was launching the local affordable housing? There was a time he was complaining that he was not even being given a phone call or invited. So if the president today visits Migori and Senator Eddie Oketch is not informed that the president will be in Migori to launch our project, you will hear him calling all media in the country, local and international, and even the local Ramogi TV and what have you. So he will be calling them saying, no, the president didn't invite me, he's coming, he's not even talking to local leaders. So I'm assuring the nation that the president will continue engaging with all leaders including even Senator Eddie Okech. If he has an issue that he wants to discuss with the president about Migori, the president is ready. And I can tell you, Olive, this is a new week. A number of members of parliament that are allied to Azimio and Kenya Alliance will be visiting State House. Okay. Not to eat, by the way, because I see where you guys are driving, saying there is too much infrastructure. No one is going to eat. Members of parliament have food in their house. Why would you want to go and eat? In fact, I find it demeaning when people in Sabrali saying, Martin, why would you go and eat in State House when you have food?
Campaigns are expensive business. Campaigns are expensive business. All right, we need to take a break. But when we come back, Eddie,
I think we need to break.
Yeah, we will. On the other side of this break, there's something he raised and I was also curious about. When you're talking about MPs should not be going to State House, this was the summit, intergovernmental summit. Look at there, and Yang Jongwa is laughing. And not that he should not laugh, but he is at an event with the president, and this is also Mutula Kilonzo Azimio, they're able to go there, and apparently that this is not an issue for you guys. Gladys Wanga was here somewhere.
I want to set it straight.
Wavinya Ndeti. Wait, sorry. That is when, you know, where are these pictures? Anyway, we'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll get into this. We'll get more into this.
Sometimes love is sweet to her.
I know that we've only just met and...
When true love comes your way, it just takes a few minutes to recognize it.
And other times, it is so bitter that she can't recognize it.
No!
Get away from her! Let her go!
You killed him!
Guilt.
No, I didn't kill him, I swear! Get the van. We have to bring him to the hospital. Move faster! Whoever did this to your brother,
evil.
I will make him pay for this.
I am a Garcia too, even though I don't have the same blood. You can believe what you want.
I don't want to be with you anymore.
Don't you realize that you are way too young for me?
Yes, but you feel the same way I do.
And where are they?
Natalia, be careful!
Why do you always go with the first one that sweet talks you?
I hate you, you good for nothing! Don't touch me!
Head over heels.
Pata taarifa teke teke na e-paper. Stay in the know on the go. Getting the full story Bilangori. To sign up, choose your preferred subscription. Use the promo code SUBZ22 to get 20% off and pay. Get your favorite newspaper and enjoy the truth anywhere, anytime. For inquiries, email epaper@ke.nationmedia.com or call 0790 111 111. Subscribe today and get your taarifa teke teke.
I don't have to tell my daughter anything. She's smart enough to realize on her own that she'll never get anywhere with a man like that.
What makes you think that I'm asking for your opinion? I am only informing you.
Now that you're with him, are you taking my daughter from me too?
Her death was caused by a gas leak. That's like falling asleep. That's it. I wouldn't think that she ended up all...
She could have fallen and hit her face. We don't know. How can you be so insensitive? I actually bought myself a cart. I worked extra hard so we could achieve that, Leslie. But really, it doesn't matter now because you left me.
Oh, so that's why you betrayed my trust and told my father where I was hiding?
Yes, I did it because I love you.
It had to be you.
To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol sure.
I'm Julius Kipngetich. I will be one of the speakers at the Lake House in Tigoni. This is a conversation we are going to be having about men. There are many things we need to talk about ourselves so that we can strengthen us, we can strengthen our families, we can strengthen our friendships as men. You never live long enough to make all the mistakes others have made. It's always good to learn from others, and this event in Tigoni is about learning from each other, our experiences, our joys, our laughters, our pains, and together with these experiences we can grow. See you then on the 25th of February, Lake House, Tigoni.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. We have Charles Munyui in studio, governance consultant, Migori Senator Eddie Okech. We also have Samson Cherargei, Nandi Senator, and Dr. Martin Olo. Mwalimu, wacha nikuite mwalimu, unasema ulifunza. Senator Cherargei. Haya basi, Charles. Yesterday in Nakuru, during the interdenominational prayers, we saw Kimani Ichung'wah tell Sabina Chege usijali. She's, I think, deputy minority whip. Akamwambia, you will not lose your seat now that you have defected from the opposition and are joining Kenya Kwanza. We saw something similar with Jubilee when there was a purge in terms of House leadership following the COVID-19 pandemic. So Kimani Ichung'wah recalled him, Kihika, I can't remember who the others were that he referenced as well.
Including myself.
Having faced the same thing. But then if your ideals do not line up with the side you ascribed to, but to the party which nominated you, shouldn't you lose your seat?
I believe you should. Let's start there. But if you remember what they started by doing, they started by taking over the party, quote unquote, for lack of a better way of putting it. And they gave Kanini Kega the position of Secretary General, so that in whatever actions they are taking now, they are going as a political party. I want to believe they are doing that so that as they go, they are trying to validate whatever it is that they are doing. I was keener on listening to the president address the whole situation, and listening to the president was very careful. He did not go the direction of saying now, Jubilee has joined Kenya Kwanza, this is now the way we are going. He just said, I'm going to work with everyone. Yeah, and I think that would have been the conversation right there. He avoided getting the details of now how the arrangement works. Of course, everyone was declaring they are working with this, they are now Kenya Kwanza, this is what we are going to do. To me, the problem is a problem with Jubilee as a party itself. When all these problems started coming up, where is the leadership, the real leadership of Jubilee? The chairman or whatever it is, the party leader of Jubilee, has he convened anything to have a discussion around what is happening to that political party in the first instance?
Aliongea nini? Ilikuwa Luanda. Luanda na Kisumu akasema Raila Odinga is my party leader.
Allow me.
I want to help you, Charles. I want to help you.
Just a minute.
I want to help you. Either you are a government consultant or not, because what you are saying is you want to say that the due process can be ignored and it's okay.
Yeah. I didn't say that.
Please.
I did not say
that's
that.
Where I want you to be. Let's start from the bottom.
Okay, but let him finish his point. Let him finish his point.
Martin,
let's start
what I'm trying to say is, in very simple terms, this is the same party that took us to nomination processes where you are interviewed for a seat, to get a ticket. And anybody has the audacity to stand there and guide anybody on anything. You are taken for an interview, and that's why Jubilee performed miserably. There is no apologies in as far as that is concerned. This is a party that is led in a very interesting way. You walk in, you are interviewed, they say this is the one who has won. And there is no follow-up in terms of the ones that did not win in that interview. What happens to them? There is a problem in terms of how Jubilee is managed. That is for a fact. That does not mean moving forward, now that there is a problem, that people have won on a certain ticket, so they don't subscribe to whatever it is that's happening. Secondly, we came up with an arrangement, and Martin will help us, in terms of the coalition political party that was formed courtesy of the amendment to the Political Parties Act. what was that exactly? Because the assumption should be, if you are supposed to exit as a party 3 months after elections, you're only allowed to do that. Then how come the Azimio team in itself did not have a majority, to the extent that they could not get the positions that were supposed to go for majorities in parliament? So what is this law, and what exactly does it speak to, and what exactly is happening around there? So there are a lot of systemic issues that go with even the amendment, the creation of the coalition political party in the first instance by way of that amendment to the Political Parties Act. Now, in terms of disciplining, remember, disciplining individual members. That's what I was coming to. Individual members are disciplined by the political party. So the question is, who is supposed to have this sitting where now the decision is made that you guys have not done right? You should be doing this, you should be doing the other one. So this is a process that you saw how Raila reacted immediately. Yeah, how the process of dealing with the people who are errand is being done. What is happening on the other side? Have you seen anything that looks like it is about reining in on the so-called errand members? Have you seen
First
anything?
of all, we are not even sure who the real SG
precisely
of Jubilee Party is.
That is what I'm saying. That is what I'm saying. Much as we will go to all those other processes and talk about all those other things, I am saying, do you want to say Jubilee has no issues as a political party? A management issue, a serious management, and this is not about ODM right now. I am talking about a senior partner in the Azimio team that does not seem to have a proper system, to the extent that people can call them this chairman and all the other ones. Others can call themselves the secretary generals and the other one, and nobody finds it necessary to convene a sitting to have a discussion and put the records right. I think that's really critical.
All right, the party leader.
Because we are on a national platform, we owe Kenyans the truth and also some education. Jubilee has a party, has a constitution. It has mechanisms around which it can cause certain decisions to happen or certain changes to happen. That's the first thing we do. So what my colleague should be asking is whether due process was followed. Two, we have a constitution that says that anyone should not be tried without fair trial. Anyone should not be actioned, without a fair administrative action. So all we should be asking is, was the Secretary General of Jubilee properly handled? Was that decision handled? Is there really a change that according to the procedure? And if you ask that, there is no procedure. No meeting was convened and no notice was given, and therefore no action was supposed to have emanated. What we are having is a fellow sitting under a tree and generating a coup within a party, calling themselves what they want, and they want to legitimize themselves.
It's time for Eddie to respond, and as you respond to consequences, choices having consequences, at least in ODM you have triggered the internal party mechanisms with regard to the members who went to State House, and as you respond to that, you're saying there's nothing wrong, because it appears these governors from Azimio have recognized the presidency of William Ruto. I see Abdul Swamad Sharif Nasir attended this summit. I saw Gladys Wanga there as well. So is there not a double standard?
I'm going to answer that, but I think I agree with my brother Solidan, and this is why I was cautioning Olive that we are on the path to a dictatorship, because the disruption of these parties is not inborn. It is the disruption that is outborn. It is a disruption that has been caused by individuals who have played loyalty to the executive, and more particularly to the State House, to the extent that they are facilitated to cause these commotions. And as my brother said, there's no due process. The Jubilee constitution is very clear that the convener of such a national delegates meeting would be the party leader and or the Secretary General, or actually, to the extent that His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta is the party leader of Jubilee, and to the extent that Jeremiah Kioni is the SG of Jubilee, and they didn't convene this meeting, is wrong. But why are they defying their own people and doing this? Is because they are facilitated by State House. So there's no question about that. And I can tell you, ODM is a revolutionary party. ODM is a progressive party. ODM, in all these parties, has been around longer with a bigger grassroots infrastructure. And I can assure you that we will discipline our rebel MPs, And
but you must follow your due process.
I was going there. You saw I wrote a letter according to our constitution and according to the party constitution to be able to deal with these rebel members. And under section 14(1)(e) of the Political Parties Act 2012, this is very clearly stated, to the extent that as ODM, we are bold enough to even discipline our grassroots party officials who might align with those kind of bribed tenets of interfering with our democracy. But that said, I think that it's very important that we put something straight here on the issues of governance that you've talked about. The summit that the governors were attending, it is not the president's summit. It is the president who went to the governors' summit. Under Article 179 of the Constitution, it's very clear that the governors are an executive team, and therefore the structure of their of them getting money and doing their functions is very well articulated to the extent that Article 203 of the Constitution clearly says that 15% of our national revenue should be given to counties. They are an executive. So when they meet with the governor, it is the structure. When they meet with the president, it is the structure of our constitution that allows that. It is not the legitimacy question that Martin was talking about. And it's very unfortunate that my brother Cherargei here can actually sit here and support something like the MPs go and seek for CDF to be entrenched in our constitution, and CDF is money to implement projects, and CDF as money to implement project does not sit well with the oversight function of Parliament. CDF, whether Cherargei goes now and turns back and joins the MPs now, I see now he has left Senate, he's going to join the MPs in seeking for CDF, whether he goes and seeks for that CDF and then enters in the Constitution, I can assure you, it still remains illegal and it still remains unfit for our democratic tenets, because the National Assembly and the Senate, Cherargei, must always remain to oversight the executive. Let me tell you, Cherargei should even be happy not to meet President himself and maybe wait for the president to meet the president at an impeachment table when the president goes wrong, than to pride himself to meeting the president to entrench these things that are unconstitutional. I have not been, he knows, you've been with him a number of Kamkunji meetings with our speaker. I have never supported oversight fund, because this is something we are already being paid to do as a Senate. What I've advocated for is that senators do work in an entire county, and they have got different constituencies, and they're being given operational funds by the Public Service Commission that is less than that is equal Parliamentary Service Commission, sorry, that is equal to that of MPs, and they have got a bigger area to cover if they do anything. So what I've advocated for in the Senate, and he knows this, he should not lie on TV. What I've advocated for in the House and even in Kamkunji is that senators be given equivalent amount that is being given to MPs multiplied by their respective constituencies, because that then will enable them to do their work as is. But if you start this idea of oversight fund, what you're going to do, MPs the next day will burden Kenyans and say they also want oversight funds. So let's make it clear that the role of MPs fundamentally, and as given the power by the people, is to be able to oversight the executive.
All right. And Eddie, when you were speaking, I was trying to trace that letter from ODM with regard to the action in the triggering of internal mechanisms as regards those quote errant members. I wasn't able to find it. Did you tweet it by any chance?
I did tweet it, but it is there in the public domain. It was shared by the ODM party.
I've checked their Twitter handle and seen it, but I did see the letter. I just can't find it on my website. You can share. Yeah, forward it to me. Forward it to me so I can pull it up. Senator Cherargei, wacha tutoke mambo ya hii summit ilikuwa ya magavana. Tuelekee. There are some two tweets of yours, Senator Cherargei, that were in reference to the former head of state, President Uhuru Kenyatta. He said he has retired, but he is not tired. And that his party leader remains Raila Amolo Odinga. All right, so let's see, here it is, the last tweet Tinga Luo Nation has never supported or voted Uhuru political journey since 2002, 2013, 2017. Strange, Uhuru is driven by hate towards His Excellency Ruto. He should lose retirement benefits and peace envoy roles since he doesn't recognize government. Avae tu safety belt, speed ndo imeanza. Senator, you back what, because this is similar to the revenge that Mike Sonko was talking about
That's profiling
yesterday.
A community, though.
Although,
it's profiling a community because saying that Luo Nation has never voted Uhuru Kenyatta.
Don't worry,
that's
a tweet.
Statistics.
That's a tweet.
All right,
but
okay.
Is it him who said?
Senator.
Is this his tweet?
It's his tweet.
Ah, okay. Then it
he
is
should
right.
give statistics on which what is the number of Luo population that voted, and then gives another statistics of which Luos voted for who and when.
All right, Senator, your chance to respond, because yesterday Mike Sonko alisema hata tunaweza badilisha sheria turushe Uhuru Kenyatta ndani.
There's something we've not talked about on this show, which is where people are forgetting where we've come from. Because this single party idea and Section 2A of the Constitution was live. KANU was live, and the students of KANU are still around.
Yes.
Senator, we'll get to that because Raila Odinga in Manzoni talked about he fears we're returning to a single party system. James Orengo at Professor George Magoha's service in where was it, in Yala?
Umira,
yeah, he talked about multi-party democracy being under threat. Hayabasi, Senator.
I think I want to maybe on the issue of NCCDF and CAF and oversight. I think those are things that the National Assembly and the Senate and Parliament, as per Article 93, can still discuss and agree. And I'm surprised that Senator Eddie Okechi is throwing other senators under the bus, because what I know is what is contrary saying, but I don't want to do that in the national television. I think he's still getting his feet around, so I will not come heavy on him at this time in the moment. On the issue of political parties, whether people have moved, you know, when you look at Section 14 of Political Parties Act, the law is very clear. You know, I'm a former member of Jubilee, a former loyal member of Jubilee. I'm one of the people who was de-whipped then as the Senate Chairperson of Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights by President Uhuru Kenyatta. I was not only de-whipped, I was de-whipped and arrested. So we know where we have come from, as Martin has said. And we know the dangers of one single political party. But the Constitution protects the political parties in the country. It recognizes that the multi-party democracy is a democracy in this republic. And therefore, when you talk about Jubilee, because I know the Constitution of Jubilee, I don't know how Senator Eddie knew about the Jubilee Constitution, yet he has never been a member. There is a procedure.
Of the coalition.
He's a member of coalition, but I highly doubt if he knows the Jubilee Constitution.
I'm not intellectually lazy, my friend. I read everything that our coalition members have.
But you know, therefore, I agree with Martin that the procedure should be done. The principles of natural justice. I've seen people saying, I saw somebody saying in a political rally that Sabina Chege will lose a role as the minority whip. But when you look at Section 14 and the procedure, a procedure must be completed. I hope Azimio One Kenya Lands has not picked some bad habits and bad manners that was being practiced in Jubilee. Because what used to happen in Jubilee, and all of us were here, the number of senators, a few of them, you enter, the Speaker of the Senate or National Assembly is reading changes in leadership without even minutes, without any minister that has been done by the party, convening by National Governing Council or any officials that have been convened. So I think what is happening is that we should allow the due process of the law to be followed. On the issue of, you know, and I said in this show before, I came to James Mart's show last year before election, yeah, I think before nomination even. And I said President Uhuru Kenyatta left Jubilee, is a member of ODM. And he just confirmed in CI, he said, my party leader is Raila Odinga. So he technically, he is not even in the matters of Jubilee. Even in repeated in Luanda Majengo. somewhere called Majengo in Luanda, where they stood. He went even to Kisumu and said, my party leader is Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga is the party leader. Is the party leader
yes,
of ODM.
Senator, you are deliberately
you know, when you look at coalition, I'm not
Raila Odinga is the president.
Can you protect me? You know, when Senator Edu was speaking, I listened studiously.
No, but he has a right to reply. Because Azimio is a coalition party.
But I'm just saying, Senator Edu should give me my time. He will have a right of reply. And you can see that he's tolerant already. That's how ODM is wired. So what I'm just saying, that's why I'm saying is that he has confirmed. And therefore, the reason I'm saying, when you look at the Presidential Retirement Benefits Act, Uhuru should accept. I know, by the way, even as we are to Valentine, many people have lost their love, and sometimes you live in denial. What we are seeing is that Uhuru is still in denial, Raila is still in denial, because how can you want to benefit the same government? Uhuru, by the way, I'm happy that he has come out. He used to use Tinga in a few weeks as a proxy. At least he has come out. You are saying the government of President William Ruto, we don't recognize. But you go ahead and being opened by a security officer, being paid by the same government, driving the same vehicle that is being financed by the same government.
No, by the taxpayer. By the taxpayer, not by the government.
Can I finish?
You know, you know you are a lawyer, so make sure that you always saying things
finish
that
your point.
I'm not undermining Kenyans. The same government that is drafting budget policy statement and will bring appropriation to parliament, the same government, you want them to allocate money for your office to run as a retired prime minister or as a retired president, is the same government you don't recognize. Then why are you taking the services that are being provided for government if the same government you don't recognize? And that is why I've said, can you protect me from Senator Eddie? You will have a right. Let me finish. And that is why I want to repeat here in NTV AM Live that President Uhuru Kenyatta has shown signs and traits that he doesn't want to retire, he doesn't want to recognize the government. Then he should lose all his perks that comes with a retired president. He should lose his role as a peace envoy in DRC and Ethiopia, because you cannot be a representative of Kenyan government in negotiating and dialogue over region when you don't have the confidence of government. So I would have expected even President Uhuru to retire and to resign from his role as a peace envoy outside there. So since he does not believe and does not enjoy the confidence and the assurance before the region, either in DRC or in Ethiopia, so that he can give other Kenyans who can become a serious representative on behalf of the Kenyans.
All right.
And therefore he can come back and join my brother Senator Eddie and his party leader Raila Odinga and do rallies.
Okay.
But first he must pay tax. Then he can go for rally.
All right, and we'll come back around to the question of tax. But Dr. Olo, because I think, Charles, we haven't gotten your comment. Is Senator Cherargei misinterpreting the statements made by the former President Uhuru Kenyatta? Because the two statements that stuck with me were, one, he is retired but not tired. And then he said Raila Odinga remains his party leader and that it is his democratic right. Now, the Presidential Retirement Benefits Act speaks to him resigning a position of political party leadership. Can he remain a member of a political party even as a retired president? Is he within his right? Is it, as you know, he's reading the statement to mean that he does not recognize William Ruto? Is that an accurate assessment or faulty?
You know, one thing that you should give to the UDA people and Kenya Kwanza people is they live in the post-truth era. They believe in misinformation. They're very intelligent people. They're very knowledgeable. But they take you on a line. For example, he's taking you on a line that he knows for sure is not supported by the law. That the President Uhuru Kenyatta is the fourth president of this country is both a fact and a constitutional issue. That he retires from that office and he has handed over is also a fact, and that there are some things that he's entitled to, no matter what his opinion or his position is. This thing about the PACs is that he should not be active in a political party as a leader. That does not stop him from being a member of a political party. It does not even force him to recognize the government of the day. He is talking about the government. You see, Kenyans, we have a state and we have a constitution and we have one government. One government. That government is renewed every 5 years. Today it is Ruto, yesterday it was Uhuru, tomorrow it might be Olo. That is government. So that government is always going to be here, and it's funded by me, it's funded by taxes, it's not funded by an individual, or it's not a favor it does to anybody. It is our government. So let's get that right. The other thing that we glossed over, and I think Eddie talked about it, but I wanted to put it in the context. The summit is a constitutional office or organ which is chaired by the president. Now, governors are at liberty to go, and they can be there as governors and meet with the president. I want to advise Kenyans that we are in our constitution allows us to be in an American style of politics where minority and majority can play together depending on what interests are. Nothing stops a minority from going to State House. Nothing. Nothing stops the president from going to opposition. Nothing. In fact, there's no opposition. There's minority and there is majority. Yes. So the country is running on the basis of a bipartisan, if you like, or sometimes a majoritarian, if you like. So if you want to have your way as Kenya Kwanza, you can have your way, but remember always that a minority will have their say.
Okay.
And those are issues that we need to work on, so that the president needs to understand that and implement it through and through. But because it's convenient, sometimes you say one thing, you do another. So we are living in the post-truth. And misinformation is the biggest tool available.
Okay, I want to come back, and then in a minute each we wind up. Just a minute each. But first, let's listen in to what the Member of Parliament for Nakuru West, Sam Arama, had to say on the visits to State House. Do we have the soundbite?
Well, you can use this as closing remarks.
Sisi wale tulikuwa Jubilee, saa hii kwa sababu tumeingia ndani ya Kenya Kwanza, tunataka tufanye kazi pamoja. Ile vitisho tunapewa, tunaambiwa ya kwamba hatuwezi kuja State House. Sisi tualike, tutakuja mara mingi zaidi. Hatuna shida, kwa sababu hao wenyewe chuzi walikuwa wanaenda State House, Uhuru Kenyatta akikuwa hapo. Sijui walikuwa wanapeleka tumbo gani ile unasema sisi tunapeleka. Iko tumbo mbili kweli? Kwani tumbo si kitu kidogo sana kwa member of parliament? Uelezwa ati umeenda State House kupeleka tumbo. Hiyo mimi naona kama ni matusi. Your Excellency, we will be coming there several times when we are coming to see you, and we have no apologies to make to anybody. Kubalia sisi tuingie, wengine unajua sisi tumefanya kazi na wewe. Huyu bwana Rigati alikuwa amekuja bunge mara ya kwanza, angalia saa hii anakaa wapi, kwa sababu ya hii maombi hii mnaomba hapa. Kwa hivyo hata sisi leo tumewacha dhambi zetu hapa sote, tukienda pale nje tutakuwa watu ya Jubilee.
All right, 30 seconds each. Last word, Charles.
Now, two quick ones. I think I still reiterate, and the senator did not seem to understand where I came from. There is no proper mechanism on how Jubilee is dealing with these things. That is a fact. When he even got an opportunity to speak, he talked about ODM and how they are clear in terms of how they are going to go through that disciplinary process that my brother Martin is talking about, it being proper due process. So the point is, let us see the side of Jubilee. What exactly is happening in there? Is that party really operating the way it should? Number two, I want to urge my brother senator here. There is completely nothing with the national government, CDF. Completely nothing. It's only that the MPs behave badly. They know they only need to tinker with that and everything is going to be okay. The law qualifies them not as members of the committee of CDF at the constituency level, but the oversight committee of the same. Number two, they know all they need to do is remove those individuals in the panel that sit there to appoint the committee members, and also remove the members they are supposed to second to that committee, and everything is going to be okay. Don't joke with CDF. It has changed people's lives. It's almost second to changing the arrangement we have in terms of counties. It's not perfect, but people like it that way.
All right.
Take CDF to governors, but what I wanted to say is...
but the senator cannot say national government can also devolve functions.
This is what I wanted to say. In any mature democracy, there is a reason why we talk about 100 days upon a government getting into office. It's because that is the take-off point for any government to demonstrate that they had indeed agenda that is proper, and they are going to achieve that agenda. This government that Cherargei is a member of, I can assure you that it has failed Kenyans in terms of its promises that it had put in place, and those promises are overly to the Asla nations that they sold to us, and they're not meeting those promises. The issues of Uhuru Kenyatta, the issues that they're putting for us about taxes by rich people, is an issue that is just to distract us from the fact that they have failed in the management of this economy.
All right.
To the extent that today, 68% of people borrowing from Fuliza, just one second, are borrowing between 1 shillings and 100 shillings. 32% of the people borrowing in Fuliza are borrowing between 100 and 500. 4% are borrowing between 500 and 1,000. It is only 1% of people borrowing Fuliza who are borrowing above 2,500. What this means is that Kenyans today are borrowing to eat, borrowing to buy Panadol. Mjengo is borrowing to be able to survive in a day because this economy is failing. And the Ruto government must try and meet the agenda that is sold to the people.
All right, Senator, in your 30 seconds, are you abandoning this state duty business about Jomo Kenyatta and the Moi family? Baba alikuambia it was repealed in 1982.
But first, allow me to to condemn and condole with the families that have lost lives, including police officers, over banditry attacks in the North Rift and Kerio Valley, Turkana, and other regions. I want to condemn, and unfortunately most of the police officers we lost in Turkana, mostly are young, fresh graduates. I want to appeal to National Police Service that they should be sending experienced people. Number 2 is that I am winding up my drafting of modifying and amending Terrorism Act to include the issue of cattle rustling and banditry as a terrorist act, and therefore let's see what we can do. I think if KDF has to be deployed so that it can arrest insecurity, we support in it. Or finally, on the issue of that, it was never repealed. Section 7, subsection 3 of the State Duty Act, I just want to delete. It still exists. It was never deleted. When you look at the Abolition Act of 1982, it has never, by the way, there is a lot of miscommunication and misinformation, as my brother said, because I am not amending to include each and every Kenyans to pay Estate Duty Act. What I'm doing is just to delete that section.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. Your last word, Dr. Lo?
Well, we live in a country that runs away from its history. I've lived long enough to see Jomo Kenyatta presidency. I've lived through Moi era, Kibaki era, and so on. And one thing that I'm very clear about is that we cannot go back to the dark ages. We cannot go back to the days of imperial presidency. We've seen signs of it. We'll continue talking about it.
All right.
Nothing about the president, nothing about this government, but just about the law and the rule of law.
All right, that's it for AM Live. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'm sorry for rushing you. Dr. Martin Olo, Advocate Samson Cherargei, who is the Nandi Senator, Senator Eddie Okech, who's the Migori Senator, as well as Charles Munui, a governance consultant. Thank you so much. I'll have you back. Good morning.
How do you keep your toilets clean? I use normal detergent and bleach for washing. The detergent and bleach cleanless can leave behind yellowness, rust, and germs. Harpic's 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergents and bleach, and kills 99.9% illness-causing germs in your toilet, including the COVID-19 virus.
Unlock limitless potential for your business with Nation Digital Summit, where connections, partnerships, and networking with industry leaders can take your company to new heights. This year, don't miss out on the opportunity to engage, learn, and connect with a global audience as we explore the opportunities around enhancing Africa's digital transformation. Book your slot today for the Nation Digital Summit happening on the 22nd to the 24th of February at the Sarova White Sands in Mombasa County.
Madam. Nauza hapa maskati, nauza ma-t-shirts hapa, unaweza cheki maskati niko nazo hapa.
Nani alikwambia mimi anataka skirt?
Madam, cheki hii skirt.
Toka na hiki toko hapa.
Madam, unaona hii skirt? Hii skirt ukivaa mbele ya mzee utamchanganyisha.
Mimi hata na mzee.
Madam, bas, ndio kwa maana nakuuzia hii skirt akufanya upate mzee. Angalia.
Mimi mambo ya wazee hapana taka. Mimi anatafutia bana.
Bas, saa hii basi patie mwenye anakutafutia bwana. Madam, hii skirt ndio original.
Mamangu hayuko hapa sasa, nataka kumfosishia kitu.
Kwa tu hii skirt.
Hapana, mimi hapana taka.
Basi fanya hivi.
Madam,
ushashikilia skirt.
Mimi atatupa.
Madam, sio ukishashikilia patie tu pesa.
To get Mitumba Skat by Crazy Kena, dial *811*929#. Skiza, Na Nation.
Who am I? Why am I here? What will I be remembered for?
These questions come to a man at different stages of his life.
Early for some, late for others. Yet some men go through life groping for answers.
But fortunately for you, this doesn't have to be the case.
The second edition of Man Cave is an event
where you'll get to spend time with different men. Learn from those who've gone ahead of you
on the journey that is a man's life. Take a trip to the Serene Lake House, Tigoni, and experience the perfect boys getaway. Full of fun-filled games, cars, food, nyama choma, drinks, networking opportunities. 25th of February. Grab your tickets by going to www.kenyabars.com today. The Man Cave. It's a man's affair.